At least 14 Americans are dead while more are being held hostage. President Biden today calling Hamas's attacks sheer evil and vowing to stand with Israel. Joining us now live is NTD's White House correspondent Iris Tao. Good evening, Iris. What's President Biden saying as the conflict in the Middle East is escalating?
Good evening to you, Steve. President Biden today confirmed that among the over 1,000 people killed in Israel, there were 14 American citizens. And President Biden went on to double down on U.S. support for ongoing Israeli defense by saying that our response would also be overwhelming if the U.S. were attacked in the same way by Hamas. Let's watch it.
A group whose stated purpose for being is to kill Jews. This is an act of sheer evil. We stand with Israel. Anyone thinking of taking advantage of this situation, I have one word.
The White House told us today that at least 20 American citizens are missing in Israel, and President Biden today confirmed that some Americans are being held hostage by Hamas. We know that Hamas has threatened to execute hostages, and now U.S. citizens living in Israel are calling on the Biden administration to help them find their missing family members. Here's what they said.
To bring the U.S. citizens back home safe and sound. We expect nothing less from the U.S. administration.
He's an arm length away in Gaza, evidently, but couldn't be farther from me. If there ever was a moment of good against evil, in the harshest terms, this is it.
The U.S. is sharing intelligence with Israel as well as sending experts over there to help them find missing Israeli as well as American citizens. And the U.S. is also sending over air defense as well as munitions to help them defend themselves. And we also know that the U.S. is trying to strengthen a deterrence posture in the region by sending over a carrier strike group to the eastern Mediterranean. And thus, as U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is scheduled to travel to Israel this Thursday to both learn more about the situation on the ground and to send a message of support. Back to you.
Thank you, Iris. So what is the atmosphere like right now in Israel as the war enters into the next phase? And how will the country move forward? Joining us now from Tel Aviv, Israel, we have ILTV news correspondent Emily Sher. Emily Sher, thank you so much for joining us from Tel Aviv.
Glad to be here.
Emily, Israel has been through a lot over the years, terrorist attacks, missile attacks, and the like. But this is different. What is the feeling like in Israel right now as the loss is still being processed?
I mean, I think that the entire Israeli public is traumatized by what we've seen, what our friends and family have experienced, what we have experienced, depending on where you are geographically. The north is under fire, the south is under heavy fire and a terrorist infiltration. And the reports coming from the survivors are even more harrowing. I mean, the news that just broke, even, in the last couple of hours, was that they found up to 40 dead babies in southern Israel. Some of them were even beheaded. There have been other reports of Israelis who were murdered, also beheaded. There has been sexual violence. There's been rape. Of course, there's also been kidnapping, as has been at this point now widely reported. We estimate a little over 100. I've seen reports of up to 150. Hamas is claiming 130 captives that have been dragged back to the Gaza Strip. Some of them, they're holding bodies of Israelis that they've murdered. I mean, the whole scene is it's beyond anything I could have imagined. It's horrific, absolutely horrific.
In your mind, lastly, if you could just take us, hopefully, to the day beyond this war, when the bombing is over, what should be next after Hamas is rooted out? What is the path forward? Is there a blueprint for Israelis and Palestinians to coexist peacefully as neighbors?
I mean, I think that we are not going to be able to move forward with the peace process until we have a leadership in Gaza and the West Bank that, first of all, is able to work with each other. I mean, one of the biggest obstacles to the peace process hasn't actually been Israel. It's in fact been the internal division of Palestinian players. So the Palestinian Authority is actually a fierce rival of Hamas, which has been part of the tension. Hamas is not the legitimate representation of the Palestinian people, and yet they have overtaken the Gaza Strip, ironically, democratically, back when they took control. And then after they democratically took control, they threw their political opponents off the roof. So from that time, I think Israelis have been sounding the alarm about the true face of this organization. And yet it hasn't really, our warnings haven't really been heeded. And I think that the international community, unfortunately, as a result of this awful pogrom against Israel, is starting to realize a little bit that, you know, Hamas really is no different than ISIS. And I also want to emphasize the fact that there is the involvement of the Islamic Republic of Iran when it comes to this issue. Regime officials in Iran have stated that they were involved in it. We know that they've been supporting Hamas and Islamic Jihad in Gaza, as well as Hezbollah on Israel's northern border, with tens of millions of dollars every single year. They've provided training. There were Hamas representatives on the first day of these attacks who stated that that the Islamic Republic of Iran gave the green light for this operation. So they're heavily involved in this. And just a few days before, last Monday, we saw Islamic Jihad officials as well as Hamas leaders meeting with the Ayatollah himself. So this is a coordinated, premeditated, genocidal effort on the part of Palestinian terrorists, or rather the proxies of the Islamic Republic of Iran.
Emily Sher joining us from Tel Aviv, Israel, where bomb sirens are still going off on the hour, every hour, it seems like, from reports. Thank you so much for joining us, and stay safe.
Thank you. Thank you.
Democratic lawmakers fear support for Israel within their own party could be waning. That's as news and images of the counteroffensive in Gaza are expected to spread soon. U.S. support for Israel since the attacks took place has been mostly pro-Israel from both parties. However, that might change. One unnamed Democratic lawmaker telling Politico, for the last couple of days we've seen all the pictures of girls who were killed at this festival and the children. The lawmaker says this will change now as the counteroffensive begins. The only images we're going to see for the next couple of weeks are dead Palestinians. Earlier this year, a Gallup poll found that Democrats' opinions on Israel had changed significantly. More Democrats saying they supported Palestine over Israel for the first time in the 20 years since the poll has been conducted. A handful of Democratic lawmakers are using language similar to Hamas, speaking about the attack and the Israeli response as being morally equivalent. This is in contrast to the stance President Biden has taken on the issue. Republicans meeting with a critical test of unity in a candidate forum. Representative Jim Jordan and Majority Leader Steve Scalise are both making their cases for why they should be the next Speaker of the House. NTD's Melina Wisecup joins us from Capitol Hill, where members are meeting this evening. Melina, does there appear to be any sense of unity behind a particular candidate as lawmakers head into that forum tonight?
Hi, Steve. There does not appear to be any consensus over one candidate or the other at this point in time, even as members are flooding into that candidate forum that you just referred to. Right now, it starts at 5 p.m. So the goal with this candidate forum is to really allow Scalise and Jordan to lay out their plan, their vision sort of for the future of the House, the direction they choose to go in. But also the main goal here is to find some sort of consensus within the Republican Party internally before they take this vote public. But as of today, everything that we've heard from the lawmakers that we've spoken to is that there's not a consensus around one or either of those speakers, of those people who could take the speakership. However, some did say that they believe that they would, if one candidate did have more support, even if it's the one they didn't endorse, they would change their position and instead support that candidate instead. However, there doesn't even appear to be a clear messaging strategy from House Republicans about their path forward here. We'll show you what a few of those lawmakers had to say about where they stand and how they're feeling coming into this candidate forum tonight.
And I felt overall yesterday the conversations, including what was said by some of the people who were not on board with Kevin, I think they realized would look very foolish if they wanted to, in essence, throw out the second elected speaker in 2 weeks. Right now, I'm for Jim Jordan.
Jim Jordan works as hard as anybody I know here on Congress. He runs circles around everybody else, and that's what the American people want. That's what the American people deserve. And well, it sounds like some people want to continue to divide our party and nominate a third candidate for speaker.
So as you just heard, those two are supporting Jim Jordan, but that's not representative, of course, of the other 200 members in this body who all have to rally behind one or the other right now. And as you heard, there are two totally different perspectives about the consensus in the party about whether or not is unity going forward. That point that Congresswoman Mace just pointed out about some even wanting to nominate a third candidate, of course, she's referring to former Speaker Kevin McCarthy. There are some Republicans who have said they will nominate him even if Scalise or Jordan have more support in the caucus, so she's pretty frustrated about that. Another question to keep in mind here, and something that they will be discussing tonight at this candidate forum, is the rules, specifically the motion to vacate, which got us here in the first place. Will the next speaker try to change that motion to vacate? And that's something that some members will be pressing both Jordan and Scalise on. In addition to this, there's that pressure, of course, coming from the war in Israel. Some members are now pushing to quickly resolve this issue so that they can address the Israel situation. In addition to this, there's also the question of whether or not they're going to change the rules internally to allow everybody to rally behind one candidate before they take that vote on the full House floor. So we are expecting them to hold that internal vote at some point tomorrow, and we could see that full floor vote as soon as tomorrow, but it's unclear right now. That is if they rally behind at least one candidate by this evening or sometime tomorrow. Steve.
Thank you, Melina. We look forward to hearing from you throughout the week on this very important issue. Thank you for watching the Capitol Report. If you want to see our full broadcast, check us out at epochtv.com.